welcome to your award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week through news and headlines ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I'm Daniel, and your co-hosts this week. First one is from Lazy Gaming Guys streaming channel on YouTube. It is Scott. Welcome on, Scott.
Well, glad to be back. It's fun.
You were welcoming me onto my own show.
Well, yeah.
Welcome to your show, Daniel.
I'm happy to have you on my show. I didn't think you got the memo. I now own this channel. Sorry to say.
That's what Julian's
I paid the $8 a month to be verified.
Good to have you on, Scott. And the other co-host, you heard him already, is one of my co-workers, his third appearance on the show. It's Sam. Welcome back, Sam.
Thank you for having me again. I always looked forward to doing it, so I'm very interested to get into today's notes. We are living in a dark timeline.
Yes, we are. And we are going to get into it. But first, if this is your very first episode, the way we format the show is we go through this week's news, and then we head into the Broket Block, which is the more personal side of the show, what Scott, Sam, and I have been up to since you last heard us. So let's jump right in and explore sector number 533. Kicking off with some Star Wars news, as Matthew Baloney's Puck News reported that Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy has been advised by Disney to, quote, stop announcing projects and creative partners, end quote. According to Baloney, which is an entertainment lawyer and a former editor of The Hollywood Reporter, the reason is to quell online backlash, quote, when those projects don't actually happen, as is the case frequently at Lucasfilm, end quote. So Disney currently has bookmarked 2 untitled Star Wars films for December 19th, 2025, December 17th, 2027, but currently the franchise's future in theaters is unclear. So they're kind of coming down on Kathleen Kennedy, who is sort of going back and forth and announcing projects.
Yeah, it's weird. I thought that they had already announced a director for the new trilogy. Is what the last thing I saw was.
I had heard, and I don't follow Star Wars too closely, but I had heard it was the same director from Last Jedi who had a trilogy at some point. The Game of Thrones writers, I heard, were also going to be involved in that, but after season 8, that fell through. Maybe you guys know a little bit more about it, but it does seem like talent is sort of falling off every now and again.
Yeah, I don't follow it too close. So I just had seen something about a new trilogy, like a director for a new trilogy, and that was about it.
Yeah, so I used to follow this stuff. Oh, that voice crack was incredible. I used to follow Star Wars pretty, religiously. When I was growing up, being a Star Wars nerd just meant you had seen the movies multiple times, which I definitely had, but now there's so much material, so it's hard to keep up with everything. But I do remember what you were saying, Daniel, which was the T&D, as the writers from Game of Thrones were called, had been commissioned by Lucasfilms to make a series of movies. I don't know if it was supposed to be another trilogy in the main timeline or if it was side stories or what. But then after the backlash of season 8, I think they took that deal off the table. And then the other one was Rian Johnson, who directed Last Jedi, was originally slated to direct 3 movies. But then once again, due to backlash, this one I was never fully confirmed as far as I remember, but it was kind of just like talks with Rian Johnson had shut down and they wanted to pivot in another direction, which, if we learned anything from the Rise of Skywalker, that direction isn't necessarily one that fans apparently wanted to see either, where it was just pandering to fan requests. So it's not super shocking to me that they're telling people to start keeping a lid on this, because I remember a lot of projects being announced, and it seems like each one that actually does make it out, even when they're well reviewed, the viewership and the hype, I feel like, is starting to steadily decrease over time.
I can't help but compare both Star Wars and the MCU, and not in terms of success, because they're both still making a decent amount of money, but in terms of fan feedback, Where on the MCU side, I am hearing a lot of, well, ever since Endgame, I've kind of fell off, or I'm not as excited about the movies. Star Wars, of course, some are saying that the shows aren't quite as good. But the thing that Disney does have going for it is these fans keep showing up for these things. The same Star Wars fans, even our own Discord that I see talking about how bad Star Wars might be, has seen the latest Star Wars show on Disney Plus. It's kind of like Star Trek fans a little bit, the hardcore ones that are like, I hate Discovery, but maybe I'll tune in to next week's because it might be better. That's kind of what Star Wars fans are starting to get into, where they're going to be there no matter what, no matter how bad it gets. And I think it's the same for MCU fans, although to a lesser degree.
Yeah, they're going to be there in order to bitch. I think Star Wars fans are much like a lot of other fan bases. They don't know exactly what they want, and they're going to bitch at anything because it doesn't fit their narrative. And that's just how it's going to be, no matter what gets pumped out. Like, I think you could, release A New Hope nowadays, and it would still be like, oh, why is this happening? Why is that happening? That's stupid. But because, that's their nostalgia, it's like, oh, well, this is great. Everything should be like this, not realizing, like, if everything was like that now, you'd be bitching about it. But yeah, to your point, they're still going to show up, like, bitching and all. They're going to be filling the seats. Whether the movie's terrible, whether the show's terrible, they're going to be there. And that way they can bitch about it. And that's pretty much how Disney's going to make their money off of it.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, you're definitely right about the MCU comparison. And what I think they both have in common is we're just seeing oversaturation at this point. Like, it's not as exciting when you're getting a bunch of content every year. Like, that's the thing that I think Disney didn't realize is, for better or worse, Star Wars fans didn't really get anything except like Clone Wars between the span of the prequel and sequel trilogies. And that allowed them to build up a lot of hype. And that's why Episode 7 sold so many tickets. But when it's like you're constantly flooding the market with stuff, one, you can't assure quality across the board at that point. And then two, it's really going to come down to your hardcore fans, like people that, even my dad, who grew up with Star Wars and went to see the first movie when it came out, he's not excited about any Star Wars projects anymore. He tunes into like one every other year at this point.
But see, I thought books and like comic books and everything else had been coming out still steadily since like the 80s and stuff like that.
That is true, but
so they
even
had, like,
back,
this full like expanded.
Yeah. Even back
like
then, though, the canon of that stuff was questionable. So I think what I should say is for them to get a legitimized, like, this is for sure in the same timeline as the stuff.
I remember everyone bitched and complained when Disney said, like, oh, that whole thing isn't canon anymore.
Right.
And it's like, I thought it was randomly canon and stuff anyway. Because,
exactly. Yeah.
So what does it matter if it's not canon now? And even then, you can still go read the books. What does the canon have to do with the book?
It's one of my favorite stories when I worked at the comic shop was Disney announced the Dark Horse books and the novels were no longer canon. And I had this customer come in. I shouldn't say customer because he didn't buy anything and he never bought anything. But he showed up into the store and he's like, did you hear that Disney said that Son of Dathomir isn't canon anymore? And I'm like, well, that could be it. That's probably the case, but you still have the book and you can still enjoy it. And he's like, yeah, but it's not canon anymore. I'm like, right, but you still have it. And to you, it could be canon in your head. And he's like, but it's not canon. And I'm like, okay, whatever, man. And then months later, Disney announced that Son of Dathomir was canon. And he came in, same thing, different attitude though. And he's like, did you hear that Son of Dathomir is canon now? And I'm like, yeah, but the same thing I told you last time, it doesn't matter if they say it is or isn't. It's up to you to decide on what your canon is. And he's like, no, but it is canon. And I'm like, forget it. Fuck this.
Yeah, well, you still enjoy it, even if it's non-canon. Like, I mean, I enjoy, fan theories and stuff like that sometimes for shows. And it's like, well, yeah, this probably isn't canon, but it's killing some time. And I find it entertaining, like how people speculate about crap. So reading a book, yeah, you might enjoy the storytelling and the characters and ideas that this person comes up with, whether it's canon or not.
One, it's funny, Daniel, because whenever you and I talk about like our favorite comic book stories, both of us, we have a lot of stuff that's like Elseworld tales and is not canon in the main continuity of DC or Marvel. And to me, a lot of times that stuff is more fun because you're not constrained by the preceding events or anything. You could just tell whatever insane story you want to.
But is Red Sun canon?
DC works so well.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fantastic because it's non-canon.
What were you going to say, Daniel?
I was going to say, is Red Sun canon? But it is, because they have put Superman Red Sun into Action Comics during one of the multiverse stories. And I bet you Deceased will be a multiverse story as well. So all of that shit, oddly enough, sort of is canon. It's just not the main universe or the main Earth. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. If it's not canon, you can't enjoy it anymore.
Yeah, I don't know how you're reading that
away.
bullshit, Daniel. Throw those books in the trash.
Yeah.
Well, there are a group of people that will not be showing up for their beloved show or movie. It doesn't have the support that Star Wars or the MCU has, and that is The Witcher. And I'm sure Scott's dancing on this show's grave right now, as Netflix has announced that season 4 of The Witcher will be showing up, will be renewed, but with the caveat of a major change. Henry Cavill announced that he will no longer be playing Geralt of Rivia, who is the main character, the show's protagonist. The role will instead be played by Liam Hemsworth. And Cavill said in a statement, quote, "My journey as Geralt of Rivia has been filled with both monsters and adventures, and alas, I will be laying down my medallion and my swords for season 4. In my stead, the fantastic Mr. Liam Hemsworth will be taking up the mantle of the White Wolf," end quote. So based on Cavill's previous interviews from seasons 1, 2, and now 3, which is about to release next year, people speculate that his rocky relationship with the writers were some of the reasons why he decided not to come back for more seasons. Others are saying that his recent deal with Warner Brothers Discovery to come back as Superman, which we covered last week, is going to take up a lot of his time over the next couple of years. But some of the stuff he said was that he is a big fan of the books, and they were writing the character to be not as smart as he is in the books. And he kept pushing them like, look, the character is a philosopher almost in many ways. So we should be working some more of that in there. And instead, the writers were wanting to make him more of a muscly traveler type of character and not so much a thinker. And that's where Henry Cavill kind of had to find some middle ground on certain things. And he was like, I wasn't really able to convince them fully, but we were able to write some things in. And some of those frustrations, I'm sure, led to this decision.
This is sacrilege to a lot of people. I have not watched much of The Witcher. I'm still in season 1. I have played the games and I've read a little bit of the books, and I do really like the franchise. And I know this is going to give a lot of people, including people like on our show, mixed feelings about Henry Cavill because there's a lot going on with him right now. But I can definitely understand him being like, well, they're not even writing the character that I signed on to do. So if that is the reason, that's pretty understandable. I do think there's probably more to it than that, though.
I would figure there is, because even like people were saying, it's funny that he cares this much about Geralt, yet with like Superman, it's like, oh yeah, no, I'll work with, certain people and stuff like that if it means being Superman that don't care about the character at all.
Right.
And stuff like that. He's willing to be like, oh yeah, no, I don't care about that for this character, but this character, you need to make sure you're staying accurate and everything else.
Yeah, people were very quick.
We'll cover later. Like, he's willing to be like, oh yeah, no, I'll work with this other person. Like,
yes, yeah, people were quick to point out the hypocrisy of Henry, because it's like, you care about the portrayal of, and you pronounced it correctly, I'm pretty sure, Gerald, is it? Geralt?
Yeah.
Geralt, and how we need to tell his story accurately, but when it comes to this character that he established with Zack Snyder, with Christopher Nolan in Man of Steel, and that to you is not, you don't want to honor that character. So it's just kind of bizarre how Henry is of two ways on this, especially with how the Justice League portrayal of Superman, which is to some people the Superman they wanted, right? Smiling, lots of colors, joking, doesn't care that Cyborg is getting torn in half, instead wants to wait around so he can give his little witty line of, I'm all about justice or whatever the hell he said. I've only seen that movie a few times. Unlike in the Snyder Cut where he actually saves Cyborg. It's like one of these things is more like Superman than the other. But Henry seems to be on the wrong side of history here.
Yeah, so that's why I don't think that that's the entire reason he was leaving anyway. Was it's like, yeah, he probably cared a little bit about Geralt. I also think that it might be over exaggerated how much he cared about Geralt, given how little he cares about other characters that he's worked with. So it's like, yeah, I'm thinking that they over exaggerated to try and build hype originally for the series. That's like, look, he's a nerd too, and he does this stuff, and that's why you should watch The Witcher, because he cares. And then now it's just probably more of the fact of the deal he has with DC and things like that and Warner Brothers that is probably preventing him from working on other projects like The Witcher.
Yeah, it is funny because that's definitely the persona they've built up Henry Cavill as. It's like, look at this ultra mega nerd. He's just like you guys. And I'm like, I don't think that guy has to factor in his comic book budget to his monthly expenditures like I do. But yeah, sure.
Yeah. Yeah. But they're like, no, don't worry. He's making Warhammer models and
he loves World of Warcraft.
Yeah. He's like you. Now watch the show.
Building expensive ass PCs and shit.
Yeah.
Season 3 of The Witcher is set to release on summer of 2023, the final season with Henry. A lot of fans have already said, just cancel season 4. We're not going to watch it. And I think Netflix should be wise and kind of go, all right, even though we're saving money on Henry Cavill by not renewing him, they're going to lose a lot of viewers when it comes to season 4. I know I'm not watching it. And a bunch of fans are saying they're not going to see it. So
yeah,
what do you
Star
think,
Wars fans say they're not going to see it too. Yet they still go.
These are
Marvel fans say they're burnt out and not going to see it, yet they still go. They're still.
Have you watched it, Daniel?
They're not going to cancel Netflix, their Netflix subscription over this. So they're still going to have Netflix. They're going to be like, well, how bad can it be after a while? And they'll just give it a shot and watch season 4 anyway.
I had watched season 1 and 2. Yeah, I'm all caught up on The Witcher, so I'm in for season 3. I liked season 2 quite a bit, and I liked when they were doing the time jumps back and forth, not necessarily going, okay, we're now 5 years in the future and the story continues. They were actually telling the story from different ends of the story overall. And then towards the end of the season, it all tied in and you were able to see, oh, okay, so that's where this queen fits in the character story. And people were too confused by it. So season 2 is a linear storytelling. And I'm like, okay, well, that kind of sucks, but at least they're able to sort of tell their story. I know the writers didn't like that they had to switch it up for season 2, and there is a joke in season 2 making fun of the viewers that found it too confusing, and that was worked in there. But I did enjoy seasons 1 and 2 for the most part. And from what I understand by Witcher fans, he's not even the main character. One of my friends was telling me that in the Witcher books and games, he's more of a background character of his own story, and that eventually his character is supposed to die and another Witcher is supposed to take over, the girl that he's taking care of. So my friend was saying, I'm surprised they still kept Henry alive for this long, because that would have been a natural way of, okay, we're not going to re-sign you on, then let's kill off your character, just like in the books or the games, and then have this other character that you've been training be the new Witcher. Recast someone older, have that girl be the new Witcher, and call it a season 4.
Yeah, that would have made a lot of sense.
I don't know if that really happened in the games, though, because I know I've only played through about half of Witcher 3, but he's still the main character for 1, 2, and 3.
It sounds like it should be a novel thing.
I believe that is kind of alluded to later in The Witcher 3. I haven't finished it. I've played a good chunk of it.
But it's just kind of like, it is one of the things in the games. Like, he is actually the main character. Like, 100% main character.
I do
all the way through 1 and 2, and I know at least halfway through.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people are speculating because they're working on another Witcher game, and a lot of people have apparently read stuff that makes them believe that the main character in the new one will not be Geralt. So,
oh really?
Who's to say?
Might be a thing on that, but
yeah,
I know at least as far as the games go, he is definitely considered the main character.
So
like 100%.
I just looked it up. According to the lore, September 25th, 1268 is when Rivia died, and it was during the riots of 76 non-humans And then that included Geralt of Rivia, who was stabbed in the chest with a pitchfork. In the games, though, in a non-canonical way, in the non-canonical version by CD Projekt Red, the Witcher is still alive. So they kind of expanded his story.
So it is a novel thing.
Yes.
Because I'm like,
the games aren't canon.
He definitely is a main character.
Throw away the games.
Yeah, games aren't canon. Toss them away. They're trash.
So sad. I can't enjoy these games.
Can't enjoy them.
Something that is coming to Netflix, though, maybe this will pull in some viewers, is Netflix's Sonic Prime, and they released a teaser trailer for this show.
Where am I?
So currently, Sonic is desperate in trying to get back to his old friends. I don't know if you guys saw the teaser, but it is basically Sonic into the multiverse. I saw the art that Treasure Hunting Sonic and I discussed when he was last on, and the whole premise is based on X amount of episodes. He starts traveling into other Sonic worlds that are getting messed up in the timeline. So you're going to start seeing different versions of these characters, not just the ones they showed in the teaser, which I think is an opportunity to show off different art styles. I don't know if they're going to take advantage of that like they did in Into the Spider-Verse, but so far we've gotten two worlds shown, the main one and then this sort of post-apocalyptic one where the Sonic's friends are made out of robots and Eggman seems to have sort of taken over.
And it sounds interesting. I still won't be getting Netflix for it, so
I'll probably check this out. I was a Sonic fan as a kid. I haven't kept up with a lot of the extended lore or anything, but this is an interesting premise. And like you said, Daniel, the thing that excites me the most is this would be a really cool way to show different art styles, even like pay homage to the different way different artists have portrayed Sonic throughout the decades. So I think it has the potential to be pretty cool.
It is currently set to release on December 15th. I showed the teaser to Leo, and he seemed pretty excited. He wasn't as built up as when he saw like the Batwheels trailer, and he's like, "Oh, can I see that now?" Or Jurassic World Dominion when that trailer came out. Instead, he was like, "Okay, cool." So he's not as primed for this, I think, as someone my age. I think I'm probably more excited for this than he is.
Yeah, you're probably the target demographic for him. It's probably, as the kids would say, very mid, but
it's not bussin'.
No, it's not bussin'. It's not straight gas.
God, I feel old.
Well, maybe those cartoons aren't for us because according to the Wall Street Journal, there was a Q&A with Disney CEO Bob Chapek, who did receive a lot of backlash after his comments on animated films. He said, quote, "I will always say that after our audience puts our kids to bed, after watching Pinocchio or Dumbo or Little Mermaid, they're probably not going to tune in to another animated movie. They want something for them," end quote. So this got fans and industry professionals all weighing in on Twitter and online, and they started trending, quote, "Animation is for everyone," end quote. So Scott, I know neither you or Sam are parents, but you probably have some strong opinions on that.
Oh yeah,
I
go
think
ahead.
animation is a medium that can be used to tell the stories that the person wants to tell, essentially. If you want to tell a children's story, you can. If you want to tell an adult story, you absolutely can. It's one of those things. The great part about animation is that you're free to do whatever you want. Like, you're not restricted by the real world. Like, you're not restricted by what can physically be done with stunts and sets and, even crappy looking CG. Like, you're only really restricted by your imagination and what your animation team and artists can pull together. And a lot of artists are very, very talented and amazing.
It was a dumb comment. Like, if you want to look at how out of touch this statement was, the fact that all of the movies that he quoted are so fucking old should tell you everything you need to know. And yeah, like, this is just completely ridiculous because if you go on any streaming site that's not like Crunchyroll or something that's not entirely geared towards animation, one of the top genres on all of them is like adult animation. So yeah, absolutely, adults love watching.
Well,
I mean, there are ones geared specifically towards adults, but like I also like watching just like a good animated family movie. So like it was just silly and pretty out of touch.
Yeah, especially since considering Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, an animated movie, won like Oscars and everything else.
Right.
It was the entire reason that the Disney company even continued existing. And also Beauty and the Beast won Academy Awards and Oscars and stuff like that. Again, an animated movie. And his company.
Yeah, and every time I've gone to see a Studio Ghibli movie in the theaters, like for Ghibli Fest or anything, the demographic is pretty much as mixed as you can get. So there is a huge market for animation that appeals to everybody.
I will give him this where, from my experience, when Palpichelli and I have put Leo down and he's in bed and he's been watching Cars. He loves Cars in particular. And it's like, all right, cool. Once he's down, we do end up watching things that are non-animation, like Unsolved Mysteries or Master Chef, the latest Chef Ramsay stuff. It does end up being non-animated movies that we watch. So from my experience, sure, he's correct. But it doesn't mean that Palpichelli and I are specifically choosing non-animated things because we're all animated out from watching these things. We just choose the thing that's next on our list. And it could be an animated thing. It could be an animated project like right now, Cyberpunk Edge Runners. I'm going through that. She's not interested in that show, but if she were to go to sleep, I'd work on that some more. And I wouldn't be discouraged from it because I've been watching Cars all day. I'd just be like, okay, now I get to watch something that I would like. Where I think he messed up is, while he may or may not be right about this, you're the CEO of an animated company. Let's be real. Like, yes, they're a conglomerate, but they're known for their animation. So whatever you truly believe, keep that shit down because you work for fucking Disney. You say that, no, our movies are for everyone. Everyone should watch them. Everyone should buy them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just some odd backpedaling.
You are the head of. Like, because that, or even then, he should, specify in his comment that, he's talking about specifically in that situation, not that they can't watch it later. It's just that typically they, might be animationed out, at that moment or something like that. But like, it's still a very weird thing to say, considering he didn't try to explain and further imply anything on it. The implication is that no, animation is a children's thing.
Yeah, it's very oddly like non-self-aware. It almost feels like an older person or somebody just like having an episode. Like I wouldn't be surprised if next week you hear something where he's like, oh, Disney, it's been around since 1547. It's like, what the fuck are you on about, man? Come on.
Well, let's see if Chapek does some backpedaling over the next couple of weeks as he gets more pressure from other industry professionals, people under him. Who knows? It doesn't sound like he really cares, though.
I don't think he does.
Both an admirable thing and a worrisome thing.
He's sleeping on a pillow made of dollar bills. He doesn't give a shit.
That's right.
Yeah.
He's all set for life. Superstar director James Cameron is the latest to speak out against superhero films. In a statement with the New York Times, quote, "When I look at these big, spectacular films, I'm looking at Marvel and DC. It doesn't matter how old the characters are, they all act like they're in college. They have relationships, but they really don't. They never hang up their spurs because of their kids. The things that really ground us and give us power, love, and a purpose, those characters don't experience it, and I think that's not the way to make movies," end quote. If you had asked, if this quote had come out a few years back, maybe in 2016, I would have been like, look, James, you're right about the Marvel films, but I don't know about your statement here. But in this case, yeah, superhero movies, they all have that very surface level type of writing that tends to not try too hard to make audiences feel too much or too uncomfortable. You see it with MCU movies. They will undercut a specific scene that is meant to bring some dramatic weight. They'll undercut it with a joke. They do that every time because that's what the general audiences feel comfortable with. They don't want to linger too long on sad moments. And because of that, James is right. They can't go too heavy on as he said, giving us power, love, or purpose in these films. It is all very surface level these days. And of course, the internet had its, well, what do you know, James Cameron? And it's like, the fucking guy made Terminator 2. He can say what he wants.
Yeah, but he also made Avatar, where basically all the complaints are still there.
The thing about power, love, and all that.
Basically, is still the same thing of like, they didn't really grow. They didn't really hang up their spurs. It's literally just the same thing again. Here's Avatar 2. Like, and even Avatar, it was like, yeah, here's a bland movie with really amazing visuals.
He doesn't have 100% hit, that's for sure.
No,
Yeah,
and that's why it's just kind of funny. Like, yeah, he made Terminator 2, but he also made Avatar. Like,
Yeah,
Avatar 2. And
I'm
Avatar
like
3.
straight down the middle with this because what he's saying is definitely not wrong, but it's also like, James, you've made a lot of money on those movies, so
yeah,
it's like I'm 100% with you as well, Daniel. That's why I say I'm split down the middle, because like T2 is one of my favorite movies, and I didn't see it until I was a lot older, which was maybe a good thing because I could really appreciate it. But it's funny because it's like I've also seen Avatar, man. I'm not sure. This is an odd lane to pick, so it's funny, like, from someone that's kind of neither super for or against what he's saying, because it's like, well, objectively it is correct, but it is funny.
Yeah, it's objectively a correct opinion. Like, I mean, he is not wrong.
Mhm.
It's just a matter of like him saying, or was it that, that's not how I think, movies should be made. And it's like, yeah, you're doing it yourself for the money too.
That's where he fucked up, where he said that's not how to make movies.
Yeah, because it's like,
right,
his opinion wasn't wrong. It's just like when you're saying, oh, I don't do that. It's like, well, you do though. But yes, you are correct in your other statements. Like, I don't think anyone's really going to argue. I mean, hell, that's the issue with Spider-Man in the comics right now, is the fact that they keep rebooting him back to square one instead of letting him just, actually live on and stuff like that. You'll occasionally get, an adult Spider-Man, but then you immediately have to have college age Peter Parker back, that's dorky around women.
Yeah, it's fucking depressing.
Apparently,
I don't want to talk about that.
They already have him like, he was nervous talking to Felicia Hardy and was like, whoa, that was scarier than any person I've faced. And that was just talking to a woman.
Yeah, apparently on that track, like, they have said they are not going to have Peter and MJ together again or married or anything, because they're like, our audience doesn't want to see a matured Spider-Man. I'm like, what? Who the fuck told you that?
Yeah, whoever told you that was lying.
It was Bob Chapek. It's that old timey thing.
It's having a flashback.
These kids, they don't like marriage. They're not married, so they don't want to read about marriage. Let's go ahead and not have the characters married.
They don't want to see their characters live on and have actual relatable lives, to the fact, that's what they're doing, is slowly growing up and having to do this. Like, no, we can't, if nothing else, have a separate canon for them that it's like, hey, this is, original adult Peter. He's an adult now. Like, he's grown up. We have this other comic that's going on for, younger readers to relate to. But then we also have this one that, you kids from the 90s or something can also relate to. Because now Spider-Man's in college, or out of college, and he's married, and maybe even, like, that's where I think the Spider-Man game by Insomniac did really well, was that it's like, yeah, MJ and him were a thing, and they broke apart, and he's older and dealing with the fact of that. That's where I think Into the Spider-Verse did well, was having an older Peter Parker and stuff like that. Like, they make for good stories, because also you don't see them often. It's always, it's Peter in college, being college or high school. We've seen this story 1,000 times. Like, why should we care?
I do think it's funny, getting back to the James Cameron statement, Daniel. If Christopher Nolan had given this statement, I would be drinking this shit up with a straw, because it's like he allowed his Batman to literally do exactly what James is like complaining about, and hang up his spurs, and like we see at the end of Dark Knight Rises, like, he grows up and moves on. So if Nolan had said this, I think there would be like no backlash because people would be like, "Oh, I mean, yeah, you did it, man. You could say whatever you want."
Well, even there would, I think there would still be, because Scorsese himself, like people still give him shit about it. Like, you make boring movies. It's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Or some consider the greatest director. Who was it? Director of Godfather.
Oh, Francis Ford Coppola.
Yeah, and that same thing. They're like, oh, he just makes gangster movies. It's like, what do you?
It's like, I don't think you've watched The Godfather.
Someone else had something to say, though, about superhero films, and specifically Joss Whedon. So, Alien Resurrection director Jean-Pierre Jeunet, who worked on Amelie, I think that's the film he's most known for, launched an attack on Joss Whedon after years of the screenwriter publicly trashing the movie. He said, quote, "I know Joss Whedon said some bad things about me. I don't care. I know if Joss Whedon had made the film himself, it probably would have been a big success. He's very good at making films for American geeks, something for morons, because he's very good at making Marvel films. I hate this kind of movie. It's so silly, so stupid," end quote. I'm like, I love the fire under this guy.
I also love that it's from Alien Resurrection.
Oh, he shit on his own movie too. Don't. But he blamed a lot of it on
what
Joss.
I figure was, yeah. I guarantee he's also done other ones that were much better than any. Like, has Joss Whedon actually done a really good movie?
People really liked Cabin in the Woods. I haven't seen that one, but that was like an indie horror movie that he did that got a lot of acclaim. I remember that because it was back in the day of Blockbuster.
And I know a lot of people like his Dr. Singalong's boring blog or whatever it's called.
Oh, yeah.
What they did during the writer's strike.
I've heard of that, and I always thought it sounded kind of boring, so I never watched anything of it.
What
Now-
I love.
Oh, I was going to say, you said the screenwriter that issued this, he made Amelie. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, the director.
I'm pretty sure that movie won an Oscar, didn't it?
I think it won several.
Yeah.
Yeah, he can. He's another director. It's like he's proven himself. He knows what he's talking about. And what I like about his quote here of he makes films for American geeks. Every time I see people praise Joss Whedon, actually the only time I've seen people praise Joss Whedon in my personal life, it is from geeks. It is from people I worked at the comic shop with. It's from people that I rung up comics for. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a non-geek like Joss Whedon. And I don't know why that is. And I think maybe it is because of Buffy. Maybe it's because of the show that he did, Firefly. It might be those two things that have such a strong fan base that they followed him into other geeky things like the Avengers. So it seems like he's just making things that are going to play up to his audience. And I guess good for him. But that he's absolutely right. He does where he says he makes movies for morons. I'm like, holy shit. That's
Yeah,
far
this
where
whole statement's incredible, to be honest. I love it.
So pretty good. And so good on this director, Jean-Pierre, and on James Cameron for the most part on these quotes. I enjoyed them. Before we move on to some DC cancellations, Bobby, another co-host on the show, he did bring up about James Cameron. He was like, you better be careful because he's lying in bed with Disney now. Do you guys think that he got any type of call or like, hey, why don't you come in here? You got to not trash our own Marvel movies. Don't ever say anything like that again. And if he did, is James Cameron a big enough name where he'd be like, fuck you. I'm going to make you a lot of money with Avatar 2 and 3.
I don't think he's going to make all that much money with Avatar 2 and 3, but I think he's big enough that for the most part he can get away with saying it. Like, they probably, I'm sure, told him to stop, but at the same time, like, I don't think he's big enough to be like, fuck you, but at the same, I also don't think he's big enough to be fired or low enough to be fired for it either.
Right. I was going to say, I actually don't think he got that stern of a talking to. Like, they probably sent him an email that it was like, please have our publicist review any statements regarding, how you address other Disney properties.
They would probably just be like, oh, well, if you continue doing it, we just won't work with you in the future, since he's probably already contractually obligated to do the third Avatar movie anyway.
Yeah, the reason I ask if he has enough pull is because he has made some of the highest grossing films of all time so far with Titanic and with Avatar alone. I mean, those are some huge projects. It almost seems like you don't want to get rid of the director that has made some of the biggest films of all time. I am curious about this, Scott, though, because Bobby doesn't think that Avatar 2 will hit $1 billion. And remember, Avatar 1 hit $2 billion worldwide, $2 billion. Do you think Avatar 2 is going to make less money than the first one?
I think it depends on how good it looks, in all honesty, because that was the whole reason Avatar 1 made a crap ton of money, was because of the fact that everyone was like, look, it looks amazing. Go see it on IMAX and everything else. So if it looks really good, then people are going to go watch it in IMAX and blah, 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 and they're going to love it. If it looks like shit, we're just like, wow, it looks like Avatar 1, like your first Avatar. Great. That's not very good by today's standards anymore. But I think it'll probably crack the billion. In all honesty,
I think it depends on
that it has so much hype going into it. I think it'll be whether the third one gets anywhere near there is the real question.
I think it depends on how good it looks and how good the marketing push is, because it's been a long time since the first one.
The first one in theaters and everything.
Yeah, that'll probably help
try and hype it.
Yeah,
I'm going to predict it's going to also hit 2 billion like the first one. I don't know. I might be on the minority on this one, but
yeah, I don't
really
think it's going to hit that high.
You could be right.
I think you're definitely right that it'll hit over $1 billion.
It's going to hit right over Christmas week too, so we're going to find out very soon in less than 2 months.
Yeah, that's true. Jesus, is it that close? Good Lord.
Yeah.
A good cancellation, another positive move by Zaslav in light of some terrible move, one big terrible move that he's done so far, which we will discuss. But DC Stargirl, the CW show, has been canceled after its 3rd season. No more of Jeff Johns' Stargirl show. The show's creative team were given notice, though, and wrote the finale with this in mind. So this made me very happy because it's one less thing out of the CW, which I had long since given up on. It's one less thing that the Snake, Jeff Johns, is attached to. So to me, hopefully one less thing that he gets to work on in the future. Don't get him off of this and then put him on another show or on a movie. He's still attached to the Flash movie. He's still attached to Shazam 2. Still has his claws in at Warner Brothers Discovery, but to me, positive sign. Stargirl is one of those shows that I don't think ever should have gotten a character that should have gotten her own show. Should have been a background supporting character like in Justice League Unlimited. But in this case, good. Another positive cancellation by Zaslav.
Yeah, I
never understood who was watching that. Like, after watching trailers, I'm just like, who's watching this?
I'm of the opinion cancel all the CW shows because they all get canceled eventually anyway. Like, nobody likes them anymore. Like, everyone tuned in when Arrow started because they marketed it as like this cool, gritty take on Green Arrow, and we were like fresh off of the Nolan films, and we wanted more of that. And then it quickly devolved into just silliness over time. And then each show after that has just gotten more and more absurd. And it's to the point now where it's like anytime someone tries to talk to me about those shows, I get visibly annoyed because it's just such bad representations of the characters. And then people will try and act like those are definitive versions of the characters. Like, well, the Flash could do this thing. I'm like, no, he fucking can't. That's some stupid shit Jeff Johns wrote in an episode because he didn't know how to fill airtime.
See, listen, what you need to do, go ahead.
They're not canon. It doesn't matter.
All of the CW shows, but afterwards, bring back the original creative team and give me a season 2 of Constantine.
Yeah, I mean, that's
like,
fine.
Bring back the cast and the writers. Let them continue their season into what was originally going to be season 2, and we're good. I don't care. That's the only CW show I want to see. I would watch that instantly. I would buy the Blu-rays. I'd be happy.
What if it was a Netflix exclusive?
Oof.
I'd buy the Blu-rays if released.
There you go.
Pirate it if not.
Yeah. Did that show go from CW to NBC, or was it the other way around?
The other way around.
The other way around.
Yeah, I think it might have even been Sci-Fi, and then the CW.
They kept the same actor throughout, though, right?
So, yes, it's always been Matthew Ryan.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Matt Ryan ended up on the Legends of Tomorrow for the CW, and I saw some clips of that, but unfortunately it wasn't the Constantine that they had set up in his solo show. But I was very happy for him because he loves the character, he likes playing him, and he's voiced him in the animated movies. So I've just been very thrilled with his career because it's something that if he didn't give a shit about it, he wouldn't have continued the work. And he's good
Yeah.
at it. He's not only a good Constantine in live action, but he can do the voice work too, which is pretty rare.
So he's the one that does the voice in like the Justice League Dark films. Oh, those,
In
I
the
mean, those are
animated
excellent.
he's
So
the one
yeah,
that does the voice.
yeah, that's awesome.
Really cool. He is to me the definitive Constantine. Like I can't imagine a Constantine without him. I will not watch a Constantine without him.
So no Keanu
Yeah.
for you.
I did not care for the Keanu movie. That wasn't Constantine.
It was Keanu.
Like that movie was definitely a product of like the late 90s, early 2000s when they just were making comic book movies that didn't care about the source material in any way, shape, or form. And it was just, hey, let's attach this name and get this big actor to do it. There we go.
I mean, you could argue they don't care about the source material now.
Oh no, yeah.
The shit that's going on, but you know,
But there was a small time that they
Yeah.
didn't care. Like-
yes, a very small window, the golden age of comic book movies.
Yeah, there was a small time where it was like, yeah, let's not just get this big name actor to do something because, you know, they're a big name actor and we'll loosely base it on a comic book.
A time above, diamond absolutes, as they say in BVS. And I think of that before last Tuesday. We had recorded last week's episode the night before this news broke. And on Discord, we were discussing whether we should do an emergency pod about this news because it's huge. It may have defined what DC films and animation and TV was going to be for at least the next 4 years. It was a big deal, a big negative on my end, and for the longtime Broquette on the other side, you know that I don't like pedo Gunn. I do not like James Gunn. And we decided not to do an emergency pod because we knew that you and I talked about it too, Sam, of like more shit's going to happen. And
Yep.
by the time if we were to do an emergency pod, I bet you the next night, if we had done this in that multiverse, they would have then announced that Zach is back or something crazy like that. So I was like,
Yeah.
let's just wait. Let's just hold off. We'll record it and we'll talk about it then. But sure enough, I was getting DMs on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter of like, did you see? What does this mean? Is that the end for DC? Are you done with DC? So let's talk about this news because this is going to be, it is a big deal for what's going to happen with DC in the future. The Hollywood Reporter broke the story that director Pedo Gunn and producer Peter Safran have been brought on to lead DC's film, TV, and animation division as co-chairs and co-CEOs of the now newly formed DC Studios, which is the replacement for DC Films. So Disney has their Marvel Studios. Now Warner Brothers Discovery wanted their DC Studios and even hired someone to be their Kevin Feige and someone that is a Marvel director, that one being James Gunn. According to Deadline, Gunn and Safran began their tenure on November 1st, and their contracts will last for 4 years. And the duo will report to Zaslav, but it will be in close correspondence with Warner Brothers Film Group co-chairs and CEOs Mike DeLuca and Pam Abdi on matters such as marketing, distribution, capital spending, just so everyone is on the same page. Before we get into a Broquette reaction, and before I get into my little tirade, because I still got energy for it, I still got it, I want to hear first Scott's opinion on this and then Sam's, who have a little bit less writing on this.
I don't think it was a smart idea in general, not just because of Gunn's past, but because of the fact that I do see it as a conflict of interest, considering he is still currently working with essentially a rival company, and not like a rival company in the sense of like, oh, they do similar things, but he's working on this like he's literally working on the direct rivalry. Like he's working on Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which is going to be a direct rival to a DC movie at some point. Like, that's just going to happen. I just don't think that that's a great idea to do, period. Like a smart business move in general. Because of that, I also don't think he's that great of a writer or director in any way, shape, or form. Like, even the first Guardians of the Galaxy is the only movie I like by him. And from what I understand, he ripped that off of someone else, like the actual story and, all of that. So that explains why when he was given the chance to write the sequel, it sucked ass. So I think that having that person as your creative director and all that is just not a smart move on so many reasons. And it's just like, yeah, plus the bad publicity from his past just makes it even worse. I don't get why the decision was made, but it was. And that's the direction we'll be going for 4 years.
I just think it's fucking stupid. I mean, I'm already burnt out. I think I watched Marvel movies for longer than either of you guys did, but I'm completely burnt because everything just has to be a fucking punchline. And now I'm going to have to deal with that at DC too, because that's the only way James Gunn knows how to write a comic book movie. So it's like, so there's no break from this. There's no like levity and there's no character development. It's just, how do I put a joke in here? And if there's anyone that's like, well, his action scenes aren't that good. Like it's literally just a break so he could tell another joke. Like there is no real upside to this from what I could see. And like you said, I'm not as invested in this as you are, Daniel, but there's also the obvious moral implications. Like it's just a weird look all around. Like it's a conflict of interest. This dude's got a questionable history. And now you're going to have both superhero studios completely homogenized. So I just don't get what the like Jimmy Neutron brain blast moment for this was, where somebody's like, oh, light bulb. I know how to fix it. I know how we start raking in billions. Cause like it's not this.
Well, you know why? It's because all the MCU people have been saying for years that James Gunn should be the Kevin Feige and that they need a Kevin Feige. So that's what they listened to, was like, oh, well, all these people say that that's what we need and that this dude should fit the bill. Done.
Sure. It's not canon. Fuck it. Throw it in the trash.
And they literally did. There was this report now that came out of, the rumor is that Zaslav had reached out to Kevin Feige himself and said, hey, do you want to switch sides and come play for our team? And Feige politely turned it down. So then I'm assuming he went to the next Marvel thing, and that being James Gunn. That's what you were saying, Scott. It's baffling to me because, one, his movie flopped for Warner Brothers Discovery, the Pedo Squad. And then I hear Pedo Maker did okay for HBO Max. I don't know. I don't know the numbers on that. Nobody knows the numbers on that. But it's like, okay, what success do you have here at Warner Brothers Discovery that makes you go, yeah, we need more of that from you? You don't have that here. It doesn't make sense to me. And unless you're trying to, like you were saying, Sam, homogenize both sides, there's a big rumor that this came out a few years ago when Lord Feige was on set at Warner Brothers while he was doing The Suicide Squad, that there was a lot of talk about Feige wanting to do a crossover movie with DC, or even outright Disney wanting to buy out DC from AT&T at that time. So this is speculated as being a move by Zaslav to eventually, yes, do a crossover, but to also maybe as a part of that 10-year plan with Comcast of, well, let's sell off the DC division over to Disney. So let's set up those relationships now so that we can sell it off later. That's what's got me kind of worried about it. It doesn't have me losing sleep at night because honestly, what DC shit am I enjoying as far as TV, film, or animation these days? Even comics, my pull list is still there for DC, but it's not what it was on the New 52. So this is where I'm like, okay, I'm not losing out on a lot, but it does make quite an impact on what I perceived as our most amount of hope in getting Justice League 2 and 3. a lot of people, including Millennial Mike, who's another host on here, he was like, as soon as I get Justice League 2 and 3, maybe the Batfleck movie and Ayer's cut of Suicide Squad, I don't care about anything else after that. If they just want to sell me that, great. But if not, I'm not giving them my money anymore. I have zero interest in what DC is doing after that because they've already shit the bed. They don't have Nolan. He's gone. He's off with Universal now. Alienated him. Snyder probably just wants to do the next 2 DC films unless they gave him a juicy contract. But the biggest problem here is what you had brought up, Scott, and what Matt even brought up too when he DM'd me of, do I want to see, and does the fan base want to watch Zack Snyder's Justice League 2 and 3 as produced by James Gunn? And that's, for me, the dilemma that I don't even want to consider right now because, one, it's currently not in the books. It's not something we know that's happening. But two, just to answer it now, I don't think I could see, morally, I could not pay to see Zack Snyder's Justice League 2 and 3 if it was under James Gunn's regime, if he was a producer on the movie, because I'm a strong lifetime boycott on James Gunn. I don't want to support the guy. I do think, as you guys were saying, he has a questionable past. And Zaslav not looking at that and going, well, what if there's a fallout? What if that court case comes through with Jimmy Urine of this guy who was one of his hosts, one of his guests at that pedal-themed party, and that court case is still going? Like, why would you want this guy on here? He could legitimately ruin millions of dollars of films in the future for you. And you're going to have him produce these things? None of this makes sense to me aside from the Disney buyout. That's the only thing I can think of as the only reason that Zaslav would make this move. Because for me, looking at it from the outside, it's his one terrible move.
Well, and actually, Daniel, you just brought up something that I didn't think about that does kind of like irk me even more, which is I really like the DC animated movies because whenever I get burnout from like live action comic book stuff, I could still watch those. And I think for the most part, they're all really good quality. And I also like Young Justice and a lot of the other animated stuff. And if Gunn's going to do all of that shit, there's not going to be a reprieve. Like the animated films are going to go to shit too. So it's like, they gave him too much power. Mm-hmm. And also it doesn't make any sense. Like it's like you said, this has to be building up to a DC Marvel crossover, which I don't even want to think about that. It's going to be absolute, aside from the moral implications, that's not going to be good. Like it's going to be just pure fan service with no substance.
It would just be purely like, hey, look, this character's interacting with this character. And that's the whole thing. Like just repeatedly, just like, look, this interaction's happening. Isn't that weird?
Also, it's canon.
Now you have to watch it though.
You have to watch it. Oh, God. Yeah, I remember when this broke, Daniel, and it was probably one of the most distressed times I've ever seen you because it was just like, what the fuck is happening? And I felt for you, man, because it was like, oh, this is his worst timeline. Like, this is Crisis on Infinite Daniels.
Yeah. It happened while I was at work, and I told Bobby, I'm like, you would not fucking believe who they named as their Kevin Feige. And Bobby's first guess was Jeff Johns. And I'm like, worse? Well, maybe not worse. I don't know. It's as bad as Jeff Johns.
It was also my first guess because I was like, that's the worst possible outcome. And then this deal seemed so off the table for me because it just seemed like such a conflict of interest. And I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me.
I was like, you're going to laugh, Bobby. And when I told him it was James Gunn, he was like, oh, that's not funny. That's terrible.
That's not funny at all.
I will say, like, I know, Sam, you told me that day too that you felt bad for me, but if there was a second me, I'd be laughing at me because it's literally the worst thing. Like, oh shit, they couldn't have picked the worst guy for you.
I think if it was just kind of like, oh, I'm not crazy about that guy's work, I think maybe then I could have found a lot of humor in it. But the moral implications for me made it more like, oh, this is actually like a genuine feel bad. Like this is not cool.
We have a quote here from Adrian on Twitter at L_Cappy_the_Siam, who said, quote, I am really upset about this. I am also upset with the shills and scoopers who support this. All the fighting, banners, billboards, tweeting events, etc. meant nothing to that studio. They are definitely not listening to the fans. Warner Brothers Discovery is officially worse than its previous regime. It all feels like a ploy just for Disney to take over DC. There it is. I am really in disbelief that they might not restore the Snyderverse, just using Snyder's to draw viewers in. Zack did warn us, however, that Warner Brothers has decreed that Justice League is canon and that they're anti-Snyder. I guess the new regime is too. Hashtag boycott WBD. End quote. So that summed it up pretty well, Adrian. Thank you so much for sending that over, and we're on the exact same page. I will continue to boycott it. That's the problem. One of the other things that I laughed at myself about was I kept promising before last Tuesday, and I still promised this in a way, but I kept promising, like, Warner Brothers Discovery, as soon as you restore the Snyderverse, as soon as you give us Justice League 2 and 3, we'll be out there watching these movies. If they had restored the Snyderverse before Black Adam's release, they would have had way more ticket sales, because I would have been like, fuck yeah, I'll go check it out. Why not? They gave me the Snyder Cut and parts 2 and 3 after that. Let me start supporting them now. Let me stop boycotting them. And in this case, James Gunn's now in charge, 4 years. They could restore the Snyderverse next week. And I'm like, I'll watch everything not Gunn. And I'm still on the same page. Like, oh shit, I'm still not supporting anything at the end of the day.
Black Adam would literally probably be it, because I think that's the last movie not done by him.
You're right. And I guess I could watch the Pattinson movie, I guess. I don't know. Like, it's too late for ticket sales on that, but you're right. Black Adam would be the last one.
You're going to go buy a ticket right now when we end the call, right?
If they restored the Snyderverse tonight, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I'd be like, all right, I guess I'm seeing that tomorrow.
It's a dark, twisted timeline. Yeah, I just pictured Daniel as the Superman on the cover of Crisis of Infinite Earths, where he's just screaming.
Well, that could have been it, right? We were all on Twitter, at least. The movement was like, one, very shocked by this, very sad, in disbelief, and then they quickly churned into anger. And I remember telling Papa Kelly, I'm like, they thought we were toxic before? Like, just wait.
Yeah.
We were trying to trend hashtag pedo gun. And it turned into like, yes, we're done. They're not going to give us the Snyderverse. And now they must fail at everything. We don't care if they get bought out by Disney. Like, this is how ugly it got. It got really bad. But then we got a little bit of hope, a tiny bit of hope. And I'll leave that for the last story. But first, Henry Cavill. He recently spoke with Cinema Blend and explained the choice to use John Williams' iconic theme for the Bland Adam post-credit scene, as opposed to what I think is better, the Man of Steel theme by Hans Zimmer. Henry said, quote, John Williams' theme song is obviously incredibly important to the character. It's something which resonates with the character, and every time I think anyone in the world hears that, I think a large portion of the world who hears that will recognize it immediately as Superman and feels a certain way about it. And I do think it's wonderful. But at the same time, equally so, I think Hans Zimmer's Man of Steel score was just as wonderful. I have incredibly powerful feelings about that because I remember watching the trailer. The first teasers came out, and I was sitting there with my friend, and we were both so excited about it and the way the score plays. Both are incredibly powerful in their own way, and both are just as iconic for the character. End quote. So he's being a studio guy. To me, I'm pissed off because I'm like, it's your own fucking movie. Use your own theme. Why would you go to the John Williams one? And the answer is because he's trying to appeal to quote unquote real DC fans, right? These people that are in their 50s and 60s that are like, okay, now that's Superman. That's my Superman because I hear the song. It's the same logic of Justice League. Let's put in Tim Burton's Batman theme when Batfleck is in the Batmobile, because that's what people like. It's nostalgia. And I'm just like, come on, Henry, like, support your own fucking work. But again, that tells me that he has no interest in continuing that vision that Zack put together.
No, it's one of those things like to him, it's a paycheck, and I can't fully fault him for that. But at the same time, that's what it is for him. Like, it's very obvious at this point that it's like, yeah, he's just going to say what the studio wants so that he can get the paycheck.
Yeah, I mean, this is clearly just a money talks scenario. Like, I feel like there's no like genuineness or anything from what he's saying. It's just kind of like, this feels like a statement that someone else wrote for him. And I'm not necessarily saying that's what happened. Like, he probably is saying this because he feels like it's what he should say. But, you know, there's a funny way to like downplay your own work if you're in something that is like truly atrocious. But I mean, like, people like Man of Steel, so I don't know why he wouldn't back his own work. This is not a situation like with Clooney where he makes jokes and refunds people for tickets to Batman and Robin. Like, you can support your own quality thing that you were in and not have to backpedal and pander towards like older audiences that yell on the internet.
Well, this is the bit of hope that I was talking about, as during a live recording of Josh Horowitz's Happy, Sad, Confused podcast with Henry Cavill as a guest, Zack Snyder sent in a question for the actor, as well as sharing a heartwarming message.
Henry, I have a question. When we first did Man of Steel and we were doing the flying shots for the first time and we put you in the belly pan or on the wires, I can't remember which we did first. Did it feel odd to be, just there in front of green screen, doing your flying, shot, with us just touching the camera and you having to act like you're flying, before you had ever seen what it might look like or what it might feel like? How was that? Was that odd and did you expect it to turn out the way it did? So that's my question. I can't wait to what we do in the future. And you are, of course, greatest Superman.
He's a lovely man. He's a lovely man. And I'm enormously appreciative of everything he's done for me.
And that is when I was like, fuck, man. Like, he gave me hope again. And it's a good and a bad thing, because I had made my peace, right? Even though Zack had not said, stop fighting, it's over, it's done. I had made my peace with this of like, okay, we're not going to get the Snyderverse. It's over. But with Zack saying this, what do you guys think it means? Because we know, at least I know, that Zack picks his words very carefully, and he's always very secretive about his tweets and posts and what he says. And there's been a lot of hinting by his unit director about the Snyderverse and how something is going to get announced this very month. But am I reading too much into this where Zack is saying, I can't wait to work with you in the future?
No, I think there's probably something to be read from that. I think something's probably going to get it announced pretty soon, because, like Bobby was saying when him and I were talking about this at work, like, this is such a double-edged sword for a lot of people, because like, he is on good terms with James Gunn, so this could be like the back end, to be honest.
Personally, like, he could also be talking about, just working with him, literally.
Other projects
like Rebel Moon sequel, or like things he might be like, oh yeah, no, I know he'd be perfect as this role, like in, something like that. And as far as calling him like the greatest Superman, well, of course you're going to call your Superman the greatest Superman. Like, why wouldn't you? Especially when, you're a great director and that you made a great movie. It's like, well, yeah, I'm going to say that you are the greatest Superman. You're my Superman, literally. So it's kind of like, yeah, I could see it going either way, and being a tease, or just being like, yeah, him saying that, like, I can't wait to work with you again in the future, being just literally, I can't wait to work with you again in the future for other projects and stuff like that, not necessarily Superman. But it's one of those wait and see moments. I just know that if you get your hopes up too high, it can be a long fall, versus tempering some expectations and then being even more hyped if things get announced.
I think after this month, a lot of people in the movement, especially if nothing happens and there's no hints of like, okay, well, let's wait till next year type of thing. I think a lot of us are at the brink of like, we're tired, man. I've been fighting for this for years. And some people haven't, and they're happy with Henry Cavill coming back in Black Adam, and that's great for them. But for me, I've stuck to these principles for a long time. And one of those things of by Zach even sending a video to Henry and Superman related, like Zach's the kind of guy that will not say anything if he doesn't want to support the thing. And for him to still be in the camp of DC Superman, that gives me hope by him saying anything at all positive about the DC characters and the DC world that he created, that he was fucked by on Warner Brothers, that he should have huge resentments over. That I know I'm not as good of a person as he is, because I know I wouldn't be like, all right, well, let's release my version and then I'll keep supporting the characters or whatever. I'd be like, fuck you guys. Like, I'm never, the way you treated me after my daughter, what happened with my daughter and all of that tragedy, and you took advantage of that and refilmed my movie, I don't want to have anything to do with you guys. And instead, he is still posting on Batman Day. He's posting on Superman's birthday, on Henry Cavill's. That tells me that there's still some desire there to continue that. And sure, it could be Rebel Moon 2, like you were saying, Scott. But I think Zach is, again, very deliberate about what he says. And I will be very disappointed if there is nothing in November. But I'm still incredibly grateful that, again, Scott is not as jaded as I would have been over all of this, and can instead have some peace in the fact that he got to finish his vision for at least that third film, with the promise of, with him even working on 2 and 3 without any kind of contract. He obviously worked on it to pitch it to whoever's in charge at Warner Brothers Discovery. He still wants to tell that story. And that's great. And I hope that that does happen. But again, I hope it doesn't happen under James Gunn. Scott, or one of you guys mentioned that he was still on good terms with James. Every time James tags him on Twitter for years, I don't think he has ever replied to him. He hasn't favorited his tweet. He hasn't retweeted him. Ever since James Gunn's done that Fallout thing with his pedo tweets, and possibly even before then, Zach has not supported him. He has not talked about the Suicide Squad. He never promoted it. So he didn't even congratulate him over the promotion, which is very bizarre. So I know a lot of people like to say, well, they worked on that movie years ago, the zombie film, and that's why they're friends. But it's like, Zach doesn't seem to have any kind of recent contact with the guy. So I don't know if that supposed relationship is going to be any kind of promise to any films in the future. That's the weird part.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah. It could be a very one-sided thing.
But I hope that does give the other Brocat member on the other side, if you are pro bring back Zack Snyder as I am, a tiny bit of hope with Superman. And I get it. I'm tired. You're tired. We all are, that have been fighting for this for years. But it seems like it continues for now. It continues for at least this month. I think we're going to really need some strong promise after this month. At least I will, to continue that fight for more movies, especially after that incredible blow that is James Gunn being the new head of DC Films, and me effectively now boycotting the next 4 years of movies from him. So it is truly a dark timeline, but with a little glimmer of hope that, best case scenario for me is Zach does his movies in a separately produced. Here's how Zaslav fixed this. Zach, you're going to produce your own films, and that's it. Like that's where I'm like, all right, great, done. You're going to get money.
Yeah, sure.
But that is the last story for this week's news. Now we head into the Brocat block, which is the final part of today's episode. The more personal side, what Scott, Sam, and I have been up to since you last heard us. So let's kick it off with you, Scott, as you brought up something on Discord. And this could be, of course, also anything you've been playing, reading, or watching, but you mentioned scalpers and how you've had it with scalpers. And I wanted you to save it for the story, for the podcast. So please let us know what happened that made you so tired and angry on Discord.
So where I work and everything else, we have our Christmas merchandise out. And yeah, fucking hell. Like, it was just so many scalpers. So many scalpers. Like, we ran out of, I think, 3 or 4 shirt designs by noon after opening at 7 or 8 in the morning. And then by like 3, most sizes were gone. And it's because, oh, well, you can only buy 2 per person. That's great. I buy 2. My wife buys 2. This like 10-year-old kid that's with us buys 2. Like, so it's like, cool. You still ended up with a crap ton, so that you can go sell it on eBay and things like that. And then not only that, the bloggers were out, so they're blocking the pathways and everything else, trying to get their shots and photograph the merchandise and film. And it was just fucking annoying. I hated it. Like, it was a rough day because of that.
To a lesser extent, welcome to our world.
Yeah, for sure. Pokemon.
Oh
Like,
my God.
I'm tired of the scalpers. Like, I always have been annoyed with the scalpers in general, but today they were affecting me directly, and that gets me more annoyed than them affecting me indirectly by just raising prices of shit.
And you're in one of the busiest shops at where you work, so you get to really see it firsthand on the little tricks that they fucking use, or where they try to go to a different cashier, or they try to come back later in the day to get more of that merch. All of the stupid bullshit that they try to get more product. And did you end up capping them if were they allowed to hand their credit card off to the next person in line, or did you make it so that it had to be a different form of payment?
That depends on the person up at the register.
Gotcha.
I was not working register today. I was on the floor all day long, assisting the stockers, trying to find sizes for people and helping put product out on the floor, because we were just understaffed for the amount of people that were there. I was wondering why my shift suddenly got extended by 2 hours on Sunday. I'm like, that's weird that my shift now is 8 hours instead of 6. And now I realize today why. They were like, oh crap, we're going to need more help that day. Go ahead and make it to where everyone has 8 hours.
I feel for you, man. I've been there with not that particular shop, but with comics, and now with the card shop. It's probably one of the ever since COVID, it has been some of the worst years for scalpers. They have truly made a huge market out of reselling nearly everything.
Yeah. And it just drives the prices up for a lot of things, because, they see it, or now companies are looking at it like, oh, well, we can charge this much for it, because these scalpers are charging double that amount. We can charge this. And now the people that are just trying to buy it normally are, out of luck.
Yeah, people are like,
hell, a sweatshirt, the sweatshirts that we sell, it's $95. And the scalpers are buying 6 and 7 and 8 of them to sell, because they know they can sell them for $150, $200 online.
That's so stupid.
So then they wonder why the prices keep raising. It's well, because these scalpers are going, oh, we sell it for $180. Well, now the company's going, why are we selling it for $95? Raise it to $100. Raise it to $110.
Damn right. That's the kind of shit I did back during COVID. The booster packs for Pokemon, we raised them to up to $7 at one point, $7 a booster pack, and still selling out. And I told the owner, I was like, we need to put these at $10. Let's find the ceiling on this thing. And he's like, well, I don't want to get bad reviews for the shop. And I'm like, we're going to get them anyway. They're already over SRP. Let's just make money.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and even then, you're going to get them because people are like, oh, why are you out of it? And well, if we're selling it at MSRP, you would sell out instantly. So then the next people are still going to be like, well, I didn't get any. So you're still going to get the bad reviews.
Didn't have anything.
Might as well make more money.
Sorry, I was just going to say I know there's a lot of factors to inflation, but let's be real. People are still spending money like crazy. Like you were saying, they're going on eBay and buying these sweaters at $300-$400, or comics or trading cards. It's not just that things in the store cost more. You go on eBay, and you and I have talked about this with collectibles, video games, and comics. All that shit is going up because people are still, I don't know where they're finding the money for this. I don't know if you guys know where all this money is coming from, but people have money to spend. And I see it at the card shop.
Probably the same place a lot of your players in the card shop who have no job suddenly find money.
The greatest.
It's especially egregious now too, because I tried to get back into old school and retro gaming at the wrong time, and it's dude, I used at one point you could buy a PS2 because no one wanted it for $40, and then the best deal I could get was I got a refurbed one for $120.
Fun fact, I bought a Japanese PS2 because I wanted region locked games. PS2 is region locked. So I bought my Japanese PS2 in probably 2018. I got it with the original box, fully shipped to me for about $60.
Yep, exactly.
And that was original box, everything.
Yep.
I mean, heck, I also bought a Japanese Wii because people are weird. The Japanese GameCube was going for about $80 at the time. 80, 90, somewhere in there. A Japanese Wii plays GameCube games.
Yeah.
Not a GameCube, but it plays GameCube games. And the Wii was going for $20. And I'm like, well, all I want to do is play the games. Like,
Yeah.
why would I spend the extra money when this thing's $20? Like, sure, I'll just buy a Japanese Wii.
But it's not a collector's item, Scott.
But yeah, it's not in a square shape. It's more
It's not.
A cube, actually.
Not a real fan.
No. Sadly, I'm not. I also have two Japanese 3DS.
More
Both
regional.
of those.
Are they hentai DS games that you're trying to play?
No. One is a One Piece game, and then if anyone knows the Theatrhythm Final Fantasy series, there was a Theatrhythm Dragon Quest game in Japan that was region locked. So it's a Dragon Quest rhythm game.
Is there at least
And that's
one
what-
H game though that you wanted to play on?
They don't make any for 3DS.
Okay.
He's looked.
He
Yeah.
knows, yeah.
But no, like my first Japanese 3DS I got for I think $50 or $60 because the screen was partially broken. Like when you open it up, it was close to fully breaking. So yeah, I got a pretty good deal on it. And then my second one is a Yokai Watch Special Edition.
Ooh, nice.
Is that still going, Yokai Watch?
Yeah. The fourth game is on the Switch and PS4, but it was about to be translated. They were working on the translation until COVID hit, and Level 5 decided to close their entire localization team and decided to never put anything out in the US market again.
Super niche information right there. I mean,
Yeah.
so many localization centers probably closed from COVID. I wouldn't.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So I will have to buy a Japanese copy for Yokai Watch 4 because I personally love the Yokai Watch series. Yokai Watch 3 is a very expensive game if you want it on the 3DS now, because from last I saw, 4,000 copies were made, I think it was.
Wow.
If that, like as far as Western copies. So that thing is like $200 and something, along with the Dragon Quest games for 3DS. They're like $150, $200 each.
Well,
And all the DS Dragon Quest games.
outside of scalpers getting on your nerves, what have you been watching, playing to help you calm down after work?
So I've been playing SD Gundam Battle Alliance on PS4. That is a really fun Gundam game if anyone likes the Gundam series of anime or manga.
Yeah, you guys just streamed it too, right?
Yeah, we just streamed it. Julian just picked up his copy, which I felt so bad for him. He picked up his copy that Monday before stream, and that Tuesday it went on sale.
Oh shit.
He could have saved $20.
That's always
Yeah.
the big ouch. That happens to me constantly. I feel like it's like, oh, I finally got this game I wanted. Next week it's half off. I'm like, oh, fuck me.
There was one game I waited. It came out in August, and I'm like, okay, it's beginning of October. It still hasn't gone on sale at all. Let me just go ahead and pick it up. And I picked it up. Literally the next sale, it was like, oh yeah, here it is. Seriously?
Yeah.
So now with a bunch of games, I have like a list where I'm like, yeah, I want these games, but I refuse to pay full price for them right now. Like I will wait until they will go on sale at some point in the future.
Black Friday's right around the corner. Target's already got their
Yeah.
ads up.
I don't know. I looked through a lot of the Black Friday ads. I'm like, there is like shit on here. Like nothing.
It's all about Cyber Monday now.
That's true.
It's all like, oh, here's a bunch of TVs and stuff. So if like you need a TV, great. But you want video games? Nah, there's no video games on sale.
It's probably also a stock inventory thing of, well, what do we have to put on sale? Really, honestly,
Right.
Yeah.
everyone's
I'm
buying
sure
every
that's
fucking
part of
thing.
it too. But yeah, so I've been playing that, and I've also been playing a little bit of Star Ocean: The Divine Force, which is the new Star Ocean game. Fantastic JRPG series from a company called Triace.
How has that been? Because I played some of the older Star Ocean games.
So plot wise, it's just okay so far. The gameplay is really fun though, because it is completely seamless. Like you
Nice.
run up to enemies and start attacking them and stuff like that. There's no
No
battle
combat
screens
load in
none
or
of
anything.
that. Yeah. Like you just run up, attack the enemies, and then after the battle, like at the top left, it'll show you what you got from the battle as far as that goes while you're already moving along to the next thing. So it's very seamless. It's very fun. Like you get a little hover thing that lets you like dash forward and fly towards enemies. And then you can dash immediately out of the way to go into a blind spot for the enemy to ambush them. There's a lot of really cool mechanics. And I think that the gameplay is really fun. The plot's just okay so far.
Better than Integrity and Faithlessness.
I didn't get very far in Integrity.
That game's rough.
The game I got the farthest in Star Ocean was Star Ocean Till the End of Time.
Yeah, that one's one of the better ones.
I very much loved that. I know at the end of the game you fight God.
Yes, you do.
RPG, don't you? So, but yeah, I still have not gotten around to really fully finishing Till the End of Time. Mostly because one of your other co-hosts that's on here occasionally, Julian or Zero Shadow or whatever he goes by,
Buckham.
occasionally, he decided to delete my save data for Till the End of Time back on the PS2. Like,
That's a criminal offense.
Yeah, he overrid it with his own save data, and I'm like, wow, way to go.
He pulled the little brother.
Yeah.
So because of that, I never got around to finishing it back on the PS2. I do own it on PS4 now, but I haven't. I have so many JRPGs to play.
Gotcha. Very good. And Sam, I understand that you made a trip over to the comic shop and picked up some books too.
Yeah, I actually I took notes for this because my reading list has gotten pretty extensive. So the thing I always read month to month is Nightwing, and then I was reading Batman Beyond White Knight, and Daniel was nice enough to get me Batman White Knight for my birthday because I was telling him, I'm like, I'm reading this and this shit doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't understand any of the references because in this timeline, like, Jason Scott was Robin before Dick Grayson. Apparently, Bruce and Harley hooked up. Like, I don't get any of this shit. And so Daniel bought me White Knight for my birthday, the trade, and I've demolished it. Like, I read it in less than 2 days. So yeah, I went to my comic book store, realized I was 2 issues behind on Nightwing after I bought the most recent issue and went, this doesn't make sense. And then I went, oh, fuck, I missed one. So I went and picked that up, and I fell into the trap of impulse buying based on cool variant covers. And I bought a title that I'm not proud of, and I was ashamed of myself bringing this title to the counter. And it was Samurai Sonia, which is Red Sonia as a samurai. The variant cover trap got me. I read it. It's fine. It's not amazing. It's not bad. The artwork is really good for the most part. It's just a very generic story, but if people like reading stuff just for some of the Japanese like folklore and samurai references, it does have some cool like historical and Japanese yokai references and stuff. So it's worth checking out if you're really into that.
That's right down a Weave's alley right there.
Yeah, actually, at the end of this, I have a funny story about me not realizing I was being a weeb. And then I'm also reading, I picked up the last couple issues of Little Monsters that I needed, which I plugged that last time. So Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen. And then I've just recently gotten the Shonen Jump app, so I read a fuck ton of manga while I was not working. The one that I finished is Nura Rise of the Yokai Clan, which is very much if you're a fan of like 90s shonen anime or manga, it's like right up people's alleys. That one also deals with a lot of Japanese ghost stories and stuff, but puts them into a shonen battle situation. So that was pretty cool. And then
series name so long.
Yeah.
Volume 1 released in the US in the early 2000s.
20 or 2009, I think, is when it dropped, and then it finished up 2017 or 18, I think. And then the only other thing, like I have a ton of stuff written down, but the only other thing of note as far as manga that I'm going to mention is my old manager picked me up the first volume of Toilet Bound Hanako-kun, which is a really odd sounding name, but it's actually a pretty cool story. So if there's any Harry Potter fans, it's essentially Moaning Myrtle the manga. but it's a guy that is he was killed and his spirit is bound to the restroom at his high school. And he's a ghost that does odd jobs for people. Like you call his name 3 times and he's supposed to grant a wish for you, but he's not powerful enough to actually grant wishes. So he just ends up giving people advice and helping them with mundane tasks. So it's pretty fun and interesting, and it's got a really cool art style. If anyone has watched or read like Soul Eater or Fire Force, it's very similar to that art style, but a lot more heavily inked. And then as far as watching and playing stuff, I'm almost finished with Yakuza 0, and that's been super fun. I'm going to try and play through all the games next year, but God, has this one been an undertaking. I'm like over 100 hours in. And they're extremely long. One anime that I just finished that I'm going to recommend is Lycoris Recoil. It's essentially John Wick, but with 2 girls. So it's 2 girls that work for essentially a fictionalized version of the CIA that clean up like crimes that the Japanese government doesn't want to know its citizenry exist. So they're like a black ops unit, but one of them doesn't like killing, so she uses rubber bullets. And it's a pretty cool series because she's arguably like engineered to kill people, but she doesn't want to do it because she had a procedure where someone gave her an experimental artificial heart, which gave her a second chance of life. So she doesn't necessarily want to go around killing people. So that's a pretty cool series for anyone that's looking for like a weird, oddball, quirky anime to get into. Daniel, what are you reading?
I did catch up on I picked up some books last week. There was a new Sonic the Hedgehog miniseries that released. That one's been pretty solid. I don't think it's written by Ian Flynn, but it's like a Halloween-based sort of book where it's like an island of Eggman's bots that are now independent, but they're like failed experiments or failed prototypes type of thing, and Sonic and Tails got roped up into it. And that's kind of where the story leads off, except it seems like it's a prototype version of Metal Sonic, who's not fully evil, but he's programmed to kill Sonic, so he's kind of in conflict between those two because he's a broken robot. And I've been reading that, and that one was pretty solid. Scott mentioned Deceased. That's on issue 3, I believe, the Undead Worlds. So I've been reading that one, caught up with it. And also DC versus Vampires. I think it has 2 issues left. I don't know if you know this, Sam, but Dick Grayson is the leader of the villains in that book.
Yeah, I heard about that recently.
And it's a very heavy Barbara versus Dick type of story. And then Damien being like, of course he's a little shit. So he's like, and I love him. I love Damien, but he's a vampire, but he's like, fuck the vampires. So he's working with the good guys.
Have you been reading the Damien Robin series at all, or not so much recently?
No, I haven't been keeping up with that one.
Yeah, I haven't been either. I'm behind. Like, I've been buying them all. Like, they're all sitting in the pile, but I stopped at the annual. I need to read the annual.
I was going to ask you guys if it was worth getting into, because once again, I almost fell into the variant trap, and then I'm like,
it's very, how should I put it? It's not bad.
Yeah.
Like, Damien at least is very Damien. And,
yeah. He's written properly.
Yeah, and Raish comes in for a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
But,
that Raish is in there, and he's kind of being that guiding force for Damien, as he's like trying to. He has a good grandfather. That's the thing. Like, Damien loves him. Like, even though he teaches him how to kill and all that, he's there for him even when he's working with Batman.
I would recommend it. There's a reason it's still on my sub. Like, I haven't canceled it. But,
yeah,
granted, that could change after read like 6 issues behind I am, but I'm 9 issues in and think it's fine.
Speaking of Ra's al Ghul,
and check that out. Yeah,
some of the League of Assassins that was brought up, and this is a spoiler, but it's not a major one because he's not considered a major character, but he is for me because I love the Al Ghuls. I've been reading Detective Comics by Ram V, and I'm still kind of waiting for it to it's a slow burn for sure, and it's still a slow burn. I'm kind of waiting for the main villain to make their appearance in this, and it's still a lot of setup on who's behind this. What is this group? How are the League of Assassins involved? Well, the latest issue, and again, spoilers, but I mean, it's sort of a minor character. They kill off Ubu, and it's comic book death, but I'm like, oh, not Ubu. Like, I like Ubu.
I haven't heard that name in forever.
Well, see, there you go.
I have no idea who that is.
Ubu, have you watched the Demon's Head on Batman the Animated Series, parts 1 and 2? The Demon's Quest?
way back when it first aired.
He's the big, bulking, bald guy that keeps getting mad at Batman for going ahead of Ra's, where he's like, you're an infidel, and he keeps punching him, and he's basically Ra's al Ghul's right-hand man and makes sure that Ra's is taken care of. For the most part, he's the muscle, and
Yeah.
that's kind of what they portray him as. And in the comics, they fucking killed him off. Like the one of the villains in the story killed off Ubu because the League of Assassins are also fighting this group of villains, and Batman's kind of caught in the middle of it. And I'm like, holy shit. And it's comic book death, right? He'll probably come back. But I'm also like, will anyone listen?
He's getting tossed in a Lazarus pit for sure.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Because he's involved with Ra's, he'll probably be okay. But I'm also like, am I the only person, though, that cares about Ubu? I want to know if any listener on the other side cares about Ubu as much as I do. Like, no, I'd miss him in the comics. Let me know on Twitter or on Patreon or something, because I'm generally curious. Because it sounds like you two are like, nah, whatever.
Oh, no, I think he's cool. I just haven't seen him around in the comics in a long time. If anyone has an Ubu tattoo, send it in the Discord.
Yes.
That'd be great.
You get 2 free shirts if you have an Ubu tattoo.
Oh, hell yeah. I got to call my tattoo artist real quick.
Yeah. I mean, I do have a comic that I'm excited to read. I haven't read it yet, called Dark Ride. That sounded really cool. It's a horror-themed theme park comic.
Oh, shit. By Image, right?
Yes. So it's like a super-sized comic, too. It's very thick. So it's really cool. It was on my recent pulls, and I haven't gotten to it yet, but I'm very excited to read that one. So I think people should kind of check that out and see if that's worth their time for them.
Joshua Williamson is the writer who did The Flash, Batman, Nailbiter. So he's got his readership, that's for sure. Sounds like a solid title.
Yeah, and then I'll go ahead and, because it's my monthly sub, plug Nightwing right now, because it is really good. And for anyone that listens that is like more on the anime side, if you like Spy Family, you will almost certainly like Nightwing right now, because it's a lot of the same vibes, like very wholesome. The action is really well drawn. Bruno Redondo, I believe, is the artist. He's very good at drawing like fluid action sequences, which with Dick being an acrobat is really one of the main things you look for in a Nightwing comic. There's one issue, I won't get into the plot, but it is one continuous shot.
Cool.
So anyone that's looking for something really visually interesting, it's definitely worth your time. And if you just want some feel goods with some cool superhero action, it's also great for that.
And Nightwing is about to hit issue 100. You're going to get those variants. I heard about that.
I ordered 4 of them.
There it is. Not super sexy ones, though. I was kind of disappointed. Like, no.
Yeah, no.
What's going on?
I got all the group shots and the costumes. I did try and get the hollow foil, as much as I hate that fucking cover style, but I was like, it might be worth holding on to. And then my shop's like, I don't think we can get these. We have to order 100 of them. I'm like, yeah, probably not.
Yeah, it's a rough number to hit. It'll depend on pre-orders.
Really difficult number.
Well, awesome. Guys, thank you so much, Scott and Sam, for being on and helping co-host this week's episode. A lot of lows with the gun news, but
Yeah.
I'm glad I got to do it with you too. Scott, please let the Brocat Core member know on the other side about Lazy Gaming, guys, and where they can find you.
So you can find me pretty much on Gonna Be the Best Bet, either the Lazy Gaming Guys Discord or the Reasons I'm Broke Discord. Either one's perfectly fine to find me. Not really active on Twitter, but I'm there. Let's see, you can find me every Wednesday streaming on YouTube at Lazy Gaming Guys with other co-hosts that you hear on here, Julian and Jock. It's between 10 and 10:30 that we start our streams, and they normally last for about 3 hours roughly.
Eastern time.
Yes, Eastern time. And then about 7:30 Western time. Whatever the hell's wrong with you all.
We just lost 20 members.
So tune in. We stream a bunch of different video games. Last week it was like SD Gun Battle Alliance. Sometimes we'll stream games that we're either really into at the time or just games we want to show off. We might be streaming God of War, but I'm going to be playing the hell out of that on my own. And I kind of want to pay attention to the plot on my own without having to look at chat or hear all 2 other people in my headset while I'm trying to listen to a cutscene. But I might do a second playthrough for the stream specifically. just because I'm sure that I will be playing through that game multiple times. And then I'm sure we'll also be showing off Pokemon Scarlet and Violet
Yes.
coming out the same month, actually, like in 2 weeks or so. So yeah, we'll be definitely showing that off, I'm sure, as well. So look forward to a few different things coming.
Awesome. Very busy month for Lazy Gaming guys. And Sam, how about you?
They can now, anyone that wants to talk geek stuff can also find me on the Discord. I am Sad Lord on our Broket Core Disc. I had mentioned starting streaming. That is still a thing I'm going to be doing. I will, the next time I'm on, I'll try and give an update on that. I just want to make sure my schedule is solidified before I start doing that so that I don't start streaming on like a Tuesday or something. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, sorry guys, you gotta come over on Friday now. So I will have some news on that hopefully in the next couple weeks. And I have a couple games already lined up that I'm going to stream. Other than that, I am on Instagram and Facebook. It's just my first and last name, Samuel Boylston. But best way to reach me is usually the Discord since I have that on desktop and mobile.
Awesome. And there will be links on where you can find Scott, Sam, and I on the description of today's episode. Just swipe on over. If you're driving, come on back to the description. You will find all of those links. And this week, if you have a few minutes, please leave us a rating or a review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or whatever podcatcher you use that does support ratings. Because although it doesn't help in the algorithm or anything like that, it does help out those that are on the fence and that do rely on ratings and reviews. So it takes a few minutes. Usually you just need an email. Most of the time you already have an email tied into that app. So just take a few minutes and leave us that rating and review. Very much appreciated. Thank you once again to Scott and Sam for being on this week, and to you on the other side for hanging on through all of this Snyder turbulence. And if you're not into the Snyderverse, hopefully you found some gaming, anime, video game, comic news this week to enjoy. I've been Daniel, joined by Scott and Sam, and Broket Core, all will be well. So my question to both of you had mentioned this weird eBay time. Everything is, let's say money is not an option, right? What is your holy grail item, whether it's a first appearance or a video game or an old manga, that the one thing you would pick to have, again, if nothing was an option as far as money or availability, while you both think on that, I will quickly answer. Mine has been Batman #1, which is the first appearance of Catwoman. It's not Detective 27, but actually Batman #1, which was a spring issue back in 1940, simply for the fact that I so far have the first appearance of Harley Quinn. I've got the first appearance of Poison Ivy. Catwoman would complete that trio of the Gotham City Sirens for me. So Sam, let's start it off with you. What would be your holy grail?
So this is like an odd pick, but personally, I would probably go with Batman Streets of Gotham, the first. That's like such a cool series. And I think I actually told you at work when I was like, I'm going to try and buy this again. The prices on it are just astronomical now.
Really? What are they about if you're...
So I know like the trade volume 1 is the paperback, I believe $40. Or no, wait, it's backwards. The paperback is $70 and the hardcover, I believe, is $40, which is odd that it's that way, which is insane because you can get the Paul Dini Batman Omnibus for $75.
Yeah, which you were saying includes a lot of those, right?
Correct. Yeah, it's that. And then I believe some of his like Batman Beyond stuff and just some of the other titles he had worked on around that same time frame.
Good answer, man. How about you, Scott?
It's going to be a nostalgic pick. I would get Pokemon Blue sealed.
Oh, okay.
Boy, that was my first Pokemon game. It's what got me into the series as a kid. And that's what I would want. Like, I would want a sealed Pokemon Blue to just have sitting on the shelf.
English or Japanese?
Oh, English. That way it's literally my childhood just kind of sitting there.
Forever
I still
encapsulated.
do have my cart. Yeah, I still have my original blue cart. It doesn't save anymore, but
Wasn't there an issue with like the old Game Boy games where it would say the internal batteries dried up or something? Yeah.
Internal batteries controlled saves, and they eventually just went dry.
Yeah.
So you can't save the game anymore. You can still play the game. The game works perfectly fine.
Yeah, you just can't
can't
save anything.
So you do have to speed run the game. And then with some of the later ones like Ruby and Sapphire and Gold and Silver, the internal battery controlled time as well. So time doesn't change.
Oh, that's right.
Which doesn't affect anything if you're just trying to beat the game, but it does affect if you're
Trying to catch
play the
certain
game and catch
Pokemon.
all the Pokemon,
Yeah.
because of the fact that can't continue anything. Yeah, that's what I would want. And a sealed copy is way, way too expensive now. If you can even make sure that it's not a re-steal, stuff like that, you're still talking like $1,600-$1,700.
Good God.
Streets of
What's
Gotham.
funny is I was able to get a complete inbox, not sealed, back in 2019. I could have gotten one for about $60 to $80. And I was like, man, that's expensive.
Yeah.
Damn, I should have bought that.
Streets of Gotham, $70. Scott's Childhood, $1,600.
Yeah.